Am I the butthole for not telling my nationality right away? Recently, my boyfriend introduced me to a group of friends. We went to a fancy Italian restaurant together. I am Italian. My family lives in Italy, and I lived there for more than 20 years before moving to the US. While my boyfriend and his friends all ordered wine and fancy meals, I opted for a soft drink and some roasted chicken with fries. I've always been picky, and I'm not a fan of the American version of Italian food. I seldom eat Italian here in the US, and that dinner was not an exception. One of my boyfriend's friend, Jay, made a joke about me being clearly not fancy enough to enjoy real Italian. I replied that I like my Italian food in Italy. I think Jay understood something like I once went in Italy and liked the food there, and proceeded talking about his 2 weeks in Europe 5 years ago. I said nothing about it for the rest of the meal. While we were eating dessert, one of the other friends asked me where I was from, since she noted my accent was a bit weird. I replied Italy. Jay instantly went silent. He barely looked at me when we said our goodbyes. Later, my boyfriend told me I was kind of a dick, but he's a bastard and probably enjoyed the look on Jay's face. One of his friends later messaged him to let him know that I'm an aw for embarrassing Jay. Edit. Thank you, Redditors. Some of you actually suggested me to rethink about my boyfriend's part in this, so I talked to him and he apologized for making things awkward. He also said we are not going to meet Jay and the other friends anymore if I don't feel comfortable with it. We also made a bet that he'll find an Italian-American meal that I enjoy as much as the original. NTA. He chose to run his mouth before having all the facts. Agreed. NTA. The answer to, I enjoy my Italian food in Italy is usually a oh, tell me more. Not I spent 2 weeks in Europe 5 years ago. From what I saw during the entire dinner, Jay is extremely self-centered. If someone changed the subject, one way or another he'd return it on himself in a matter of minutes. Off topic, does your moniker reference a line in Ever After? 50%, yes. A friend once made a joke about a Japanese poem back in university and I replied with, that must have been a B. Another friend asked me if I had just made a reference about Ever After and, though I didn't even know the movie, it stuck on my mind. Have you watched it since? It's really good and romantic. I only watched that specific scene, but never the entire movie. I will. I quote along with it. The writing is tight and funny. Easily the very best adaptation of Cinderella. Second favorite line, I'm just here for the food. My personal favorite quote is too much of a spoiler. I'm only here for the food is the one I love the quote. A very good movie with the worst accents lol. I point to the slipper and the rose as at least a contender on that one. My favorite funny exchange from the film is from the horse scene. That bit about her aim in response to her realizing spoilers. It leaves me cackling every time. Now I want to know what your favorite quote is. Was it one of Da Vinci's? My personal favorite line is nothing's final until you're dead, even then I'm sure God negotiates. It's been years since I watched that movie. I should do so again. Okay, I'm curious, what's your favorite quote? Oh man, I got to go rewatch this movie for the 10,000th time since I saw it for the first time in theater on opening night. Yup, I'm that old. Mine as well. They recently added it to Disney Plus and I've watched it twice already. It's on Disney Plus now. You've just made my day, thank you. Last time I went looking for it I couldn't find it and was too lazy to dig out my DVD. It's such a fantastic movie. I have it on DVD as well, even an old VHS in my storage closet. Loved this movie since childhood. I own 3 DVDs, and Ever After is one of them. It's easily my favorite Cinderella movie. What? I didn't realize it was Disney. Haven't seen that movie since I watched it on VHS. Thanks for the tip. I watched this movie for the first time when I was 9 or 10 and I absolutely loved it. I swore then, if I had a daughter, I would name her Drew. And I did. Aw, I like Drew Barrymore. Ever After, Never Been Kissed, 50 First Dates, Babes in Toyland. All childhood favorites. Ever After was my childhood go-to. It reminds me of the time my mom and I spend together. One of the other friends asked me where I was from. She noted my accent was a bit weird. I replied, Italy. Apparently Jay is not fancy enough to suspect you might be from Italy based on your accent. Lol. Jay is the here and a show-off who got what he deserved. I guess he didn't run into any actual Italians in his 2-week vacation. Or he only went to some regions of the country and didn't learn to recognize accents from other regions. I missed a sarcasm flag, didn't I? Also, a good point about different regions. I have never been myself, but I bet it's beautiful. Maybe original post will give us Jay's contact information so he can tell us about his trip. Now that last sentence was sarcasm, lols. Regional accents are only recognizable if someone is speaking Italian. I wouldn't be able to tell which region someone is from if they were speaking another language. This seemed obvious from the exchange. The only way you embarrassed him is if he thought he was superior for eating real Italian food and having visited once. He already said all that stuff before you even had a chance to say you were Italian, so he did it to himself, running his mouth and trying to be condescending. NTA. So true. And if he wasn't being an ass, he could have apologized and laughed about his mistake. This is all on him. NTA. I recommend getting a new boyfriend. What kind of person tells their significant other they were being a dick for not telling someone they just met where they are from? Jay did not ask where you were from, so he embarrassed himself. You are not the butthole, and as a European who has lived in the US, I fully agree with you about American Italian food. My heart pretty much sinks whenever I'm over there and we end up going for Italian. Last time I was in I got taken to an authentic place that served square pizza because apparently they couldn't get pizza tins during the war, so made their own, which were square. Didn't have the heart to point out pizza isn't made in a tin. It was pretty bad. Americans' idea of foreign cuisine is basically other countries' food but twice as big, twice as fatty, and covered in bad cheese. This can be excellent, but it's not authentic. I live in the UK where we do a similar thing but extract around 50% of the flavor and then add some sauce. Chicken tikka masala can be amazing, but it's not Indian. I know. Although I do miss Mexican from hole-in-the-wall places. Oof, that is bad. I can relate just a little. I am a Californian, and was spending a week in Wisconsin. We went out for Mexican food one night. I still do not know what was in the stuff they called guacamole, but I am sure it was less than 25% avocados. I miss good Mexican. That guacamole would have broken me. I'm always so afraid to be that friend/person. How would you know when to cut yourself off/keep from overtalking? NTA, by the way. Hope things improve. I always feel like I'm overtalking, in basically all circumstances, and I can't tell whether my perception is accurate. Even put a post-it note on my monitor to remind myself to shut the F up in meetings. So, seriously, how do you know when you're talking too much? Is a stopwatch required, or is there a sign from others that isn't likely to be imagined? I feel like the easiest way to tell is to pay attention to everyone's body language. You can generally tell when someone goes from engaged to annoyed by when they stop looking at you and taking in what you're saying and shift to their phone or looking for something else to focus on. Probably the best way though is to try and engage others in the conversation, give a little space in what you're saying for others to pop in if they have things to add. You'll be able to see from that involvement if someone is interested in what you're saying or if they're looking for a way to change the subject. Main thing is to talk with people, not at them. Only time you should be the one person speaking and making it about yourself is if people have actually asked you to tell a specific story or something, or you're Oprah and they've all paid to listen to you talk about yourself. In general though, just share the floor, make sure you watch for body language shifts, and just in general keep it a conversation. Oh boy, your post reminds me of a time my Italian ex-husband went to an Italian restaurant in the US and ordered some bruschetta as a starter. The server kept saying bruschetta and correcting his pronunciation every time he said the word. He was a bit of a dick sometimes, or many times, but I'm biased, so he slammed down his Italian ID on the table and told her to repeat after him, bruschetta. Not surprising. Sort of weird anyone outside of Jay thinks Uda. He had an opportunity to redeem himself when you mentioned you're from Italy, but instead he punked out and cried to his friends? He should be embarrassed for how he handled himself. Good grief. You're definitely NTA. I admire your ability to refrain from telling him off properly. I would have arrived at Ma Che Cavolo Dici pretty fast from that point on, and I still wouldn't have been the biggest butthole at the table. Ah. He's an I guy. I knew one like this once. I didn't know him for long. That's a hella pretentious thing to say for anyone who's not Italian, and still mildly condescending. You peasants enjoy your faux Italian, I am better than that. Yep. You didn't embarrass him, he embarrassed himself being presumptuous. Are you supposed to go around announcing, "Hi, I'm Italian," every time you meet someone so they don't assume you aren't? That's absurd. NTA. The fact that Jay's friend decided to be the white knight for Jay is also pretty pathetic. Plus his whole point in starting this conversation was to insult original post overtly. NTA. Jay embarrassed himself. NTA. You did not embarrass anyone. Jay embarrassed himself. We have no obligation to stop people from acting foolish. If anything, you did him a favor by allowing him to learn this lesson in a group of friends rather than do this to someone at a business meal and end all promotion opportunity at that company. You did not embarrass anyone. Jay embarrassed himself. I can't believe the gall of this boyfriend to call original post the butthole. It is not Op's responsibility to stop idiots from opening their mouths. If boyfriend wanted to stop the embarrassment, he could have popped in and told Jay Op's nationality earlier. NTA. Later my boyfriend told me I was kind of a dick, but he's a bastard and probably enjoyed the look on Jay's face. I think boyfriend was saying they both were sort of buttholes. Boyfriend commented that he was a bastard about it and enjoyed the look on Jay's face. Boyfriend knew she was Italian and could have cleared things up, but instead just watched and gave him plenty of rope to hang himself with. It sounds like boyfriend intentionally didn't clear things up because he thought it was going to be funny to watch Jay fall on his face here? Or maybe felt like Jay deserved a little lesson since he seems like a braggart in general. And he's assuming original post did the same, choose to let him make a bigger fool of himself intentionally instead of clearing up the misunderstanding. That said, Jay embarrassed himself. He led with telling the Italian woman she's clearly not fancy enough to enjoy real Italian. He's going to rightfully look like a judgmental idiot whenever that comes out. NTA. Haven't heard the word braggart in a while. I think I'll add that to my lexicon again. Thanks, stranger. Yup, seconded. Jay just seems like an embarrassing person to be around. NTA. You gave him a great chance to get to know you better. If someone said that to me, my next question is, oh, when did you visit Italy? Instead, he saw a chance to talk himself up and brag about his travels. He could have easily found out where you were from if he'd bothered to ask, instead of trying to shame you for your food choices. Yep, reminds me of a friend who went on a trip to Japan. Then proceeds to tell me I'm doing everything incorrectly when her and some other friends came over to my house and I made tea traditionally for them as a treat. I look mostly Irish like my dad, but when I stand next to my mom you can see my Japanese decent in my features. 1/4 on my mother's side, full-blooded grandmother. I never had to say a word. She took one look at my mother and went silent for the rest of the visit, and last I checked won't even talk to me because I made fun of her at my house. Her problem, not mine. She could have asked why I even have a traditional setup. Edit. Words are hard. I'm 1/4, my mom is a half and my grandmother is full Japanese. Ew. You sure that's a friend? Well, not anymore. Should use quotes though. Most of my high school friends sucked. I never had to say a word. She took one look at my mother and went silent for the rest of the visit, and last I checked won't even talk to me because I made fun of her at my house. Obviously she is not a real fan of Japan if she has never learned the art of Japanese subtle sarcasm. I understood it. But then I have a similar Chinese heritage. I'm 1/4, mom's 1/2, grandfather was full. Yup, I am someone who would have gone with the icebreaker route as well. Or you say, oh, Italy's wonderful, which parts have you been to? I've only done the basic tourist bits, and you start a conversation on a shared experience. NTA. But why's your boyfriend siding with Jay though? That's kind of disappointing. Jay should also have fact-checked before running his mouth like a bullet train. I admit I was a bit disappointed when he said nothing. I asked him later and he shrugged it with I knew you could handle it yourself apparently. He doesn't think I was an because I let Jay embarrass himself, but because he thought I acted snobbish when I said that I like Italian food in Italy instead of a simple but I'm Italian. If it's true, it's true. You like what you like. Foreign food that is Americanized is just so different. Anyone who doesn't get that can go fly a kite. Honestly, so true. My boyfriend is Belgian white, and I'm Mexican born in the US, so when it comes to Americanized Mexican food, I often like explaining to him how something is made traditionally. It's also not uncommon for people of different cultures to ask if something like hard-shell tacos is actually a thing in Mexico. Americanized Mexican food turns me off so hard. Can't blame Original Post for saying it the way they did. I grew up in Indiana but ended up moving to SoCal, and the difference in the Mexican food is amazing. Do you consider the Mexican food in the border states like CA, Oz and TX to be authentic, or is it still Americanized? Hi, not the person you responded to, but am Mexican and eaten both types of foods. Personally, I think it depends from restaurant to restaurant, but usually the smaller family-owned restaurants are made much more traditionally, while much bigger restaurants tend to Americanize in order to get a larger range of customers, at least from what I've noticed. I don't go to any chains like Don Jose or Chipotle, and I double damn sure don't go to any fast food places. When I lived in Costa Mesa, there was a couple of great taco stands, their names escape me, it's been 19 years, and up in East Louisiana I remember Tio Pepe's. Sometimes I wish I could find that here, but I can't. Not Original Post, but am a Mexican American born in Texas and have lived in Mexico. I consider most of what I can get here in Texas, and my limited travels to CA and Oz, to be either a fusion, Tex-Mex, or Cali-Mex, etc., or Americanized fare. I think the Mexican restaurants in Chicago are very similar to what is available in Mexico. Americanized regional food almost always tends to be very different from the original. It only makes sense, though, local ingredients are not the same, local taste isn't the same either. And y'all call hummus to things that have no chickpeas in them. I recently made friends with someone who moved to the US from Cancun a few years back. They love all of the same restaurants I do, except the Mexican food restaurants. It's crazy. I was just watching an episode of Hell's Kitchen with my husband, and they had a classic Italian night. None of the food would be on a menu in Italy. When I went to Italy 5 years ago on a tour, the Americans were the fussiest eaters and had the biggest issue with the traditional food our guide took us to experience. I often wonder if it hurts Gordon Ramsay to call it classic X food when it's Americanized. He studied under chefs in Italy and France. It's what customers want, though. There's a Chinese place near me that has 2 menus. One has beef and black bean etc. on it, and the other has traditional stuff on it. They had fish as part of a challenge that most Americans would never eat. Some of these chefs couldn't tell the difference between clams and mussels or crab and lobster. Oh, I totally get that part about the customers. Just the way it's called traditional when it's not close must rub him the wrong way. I doubt it does, to be honest. His name is on door and people go there to hopefully see him yell at people. He's making that sweet money regardless. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.